Okay, so if you're listening to a hypnosis recording that's not in your native language, would it be just as effective as one that was in your native language that you speak?
Okay, great question. So, for example, if someone spoke English as their, let's say, this is their one and only language that they speak, which unfortunately is very common. We see a lot of English-speaking people only in America is only speaking English, and then we had them, listen to something that was in Chinese, for example, where they didn't know any Chinese words at all. That would have a zero effectiveness rating. We would say that would be zero because they just wouldn't understand the words. Now, if someone has been exposed to the language and they have a little bit of knowledge of it, for example, I don't know any Chinese that I know of that I remember offhand, but I do know a fair amount of Spanish. And I believe you know Spanish too, because you go to Spain quite a bit.
Yes.
And ¿tú hablas español?
Poquito, sí.
Ah, muy bien. So that's about all I know, but it gets me by. So I know a little bit of Spanish, and I know a little bit beyond that. Also, I studied Spanish. I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, where there was a large Cuban influx when I was a child, and I believe there still is. Because of that, Spanish was being taught a lot in schools so that we would be able to communicate with the growing Spanish-speaking population. And now throughout America we have a Mexican influx, so we have again a big push in the schools and in businesses to learn Spanish. So there's a good chance that people are picking up Spanish without even realizing they're picking it up. For example, when I was in school, I wasn't the best student in my early years. I wasn't a great student in Spanish, but we can say that my subconscious mind was exposed to a lot of Spanish. And when we get into hypnosis, we're dealing with the subconscious mind. So although I consciously may not be able to speak endlessly in Spanish, my subconscious mind has that knowledge. So a recording for me in Spanish would have, rather than having a zero effectiveness rating, no effect at all, like Chinese would be for me, it has some effectiveness. However, it's still not advised for me to listen to hypnosis recording in Spanish because I am an English speaker primarily. My Spanish is so-so at best, and so I might, even if we consider the advantage I have from subconsciously learning it as a child, it still wouldn't compare to my knowledge of English. So why would the question becomes, why would I do that if I have the native language? Now, in some cases, although I have produced recordings, I've had other people produce them for me in various languages, Mandarin, Chinese, Russian, Spanish. We have done that. I've had other people read the scripts that I prepared because sometimes in other languages, there's not a lot of hypnosis material available. For example, in Russia, there are not a lot of hypnosis recordings that are made in Russian. In China, it's even lower. Latin America is a little better, but still, there's just not the robustness of the availability of hypnosis recordings. So sometimes when they get into a very specific area that they're working on, there's just not a recording for that. And they don't have anywhere else to turn other than a non-native source. They have to turn to English, for example. In those cases, if they have some understanding of English, it's going to be better than nothing. But it would not be as effective as just using their own language. But if that doesn't exist, and they do have some understanding of English, I say go for it. Because it's not going to harm them, and it may actually benefit.
Great.